My thoughts on terrorism are essentially that it's growing in the world. It's a weapon that disaffected and disenfranchised people can use not only against their governments, but can also use against the great powers of the world. It doesn't require a lot of strength, a lot of money, a lot of people to cause terrorist events, and you can create a lot of intimidation for very little cost. So it really is the weapon of choice by those who are powerless and feel they have to use violence to get their voices heard. I think ISIS is scary. I think they're dangerous. I think they're a threat to our very way of life. And I think they're scary not only to Americans in the Western world, I think they're scary to the great majority of Muslims, and over 97% of Muslims don't embrace radical beliefs. I think they're scary to them too. And that in fact, we need to do really two things: eradicate this group and then get to the reasons, the core reasons, and work on them, why such groups form in the first place. I don't think you'll ever eliminate terrorism because there's always going to be disaffected, disenfranchised people. These disaffected, disenfranchised people are sometimes going to turn to violence, and terrorism magnifies their power. So really, we look at terrorism as a modern phenomenon, but it's existed almost as long as human beings have been around. You know, getting your way through violent acts that create fear and intimidation are probably as old as Homo sapiens themselves. Well, terrorism is really the job, the action, the activities of young people. So we know that from formal studies, just anecdotal information. Terrorism is, young people are they're desperately seeking to belong to something. Young people are full of zeal. Young people want quick answers to difficult questions. Young people are physically strong and generally more aggressive quite often than older people. So this is an activity that really lends itself to young people. And I think that in terms of ISIS, what you're seeing are really young people who are frustrated in terms of the economy, frustrated with their voice in society, and there's a large number of those in the Muslim Arab world, and they're trying to get their voice heard seemingly in the only way they think they can, through their violent actions. Well, I think that we've certainly matured. We are not naive about terrorism anymore. 9/11 was a really big wake-up call. I think that we have done a good job in preventing internal terrorism, in the sense that international terrorists have found it more difficult to attack American targets. It's really tough, though, for the United States, because the terrorist only has to be right one time, 1 in a million, and they still score, and they score big in terms of the media and public opinion. To prevent terrorism, you got to be right 100% of the time. So it's really a difficult job for any government to combat terrorism. So I think given the amount of terrorism in the United States since 9/11, government's done a pretty good job in protecting the population. I think, on the other hand, we've been a little slow to recognize the growth of groups like ISIS, and I think that's the unwillingness to commit young American men and women on the ground to fight them after the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan.